Welcome to Retro Review of WWE's Fatal 4-Way from 2010. My name is Steve. I'm joined by the one and only NX Steve. We're in a house together today and we're going to be reviewing this show. This was the show that everyone actually voted for as well, Steve. So we did a poll and this one got literally, it was the closest poll we've ever done. It was shows that were like, how can we put it over? One-off shows, pay-per-views that have never been done like since the first time it was done. This one was a concept that was brought in 2010, Fatal 4-Way, kind of self-explanatory, Fatal 4-Way matches. We have 3 of them on this show, and the idea, of course, is the fact that it never favors the champion. Of course, they have a 25% chance of retaining their championship, which commentary literally rung home all night when it came to this show. So when I came to you with the idea of this one, what were your first initial thoughts?
It was first of all, it was a case of right. I'm gonna have to sit down and watch it because I'm pretty sure I have seen this one out of the 4 you put up. So we've talked before. Canadian Stampede's the only one I haven't seen, but going back and watching it, and it was like, yeah, I've definitely seen this before because I remember half the dumb stuff that happens on this show. But no, I would say it was all right. I enjoyed most parts of it. There was some stuff that I was like, no, I could easily forget that again, no problem.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the thing is, there's a mixture in this show. It's a mixed bag. I think it's a nice way to say it straight off the bat. But for people that are tuning in thinking for the first time, well, I've not seen this show. What's this all about? So let's talk about it a little bit briefly. Obviously, we've got the main event of this show, which of course for the 4-way, self-explanatory. John Cena defending the championship against Randy Orton, Edge, and Sheamus. Of course, that's the WWE Championship. There is a World Heavyweight Championship match as well in the show. Jack Swagger defending against the Big Show, CM Punk, and Rey Mysterio. Screams 2010, just saying that lineup, doesn't it? We have the Divas Championship as well. And again, a fatal 4-way match. Eve Torres against Maryse, Alicia Fox, and Gail Kim. We've got the IC title as well. Kofi, Kingston, Drew McIntyre that opens the show. As well as that, we've got the US title, Miz and R-Truth. We've got a couple of other matches thrown there as well. Evan Bourne, Chris Jericho, along with the Hart Dynasty against the Usos and Tamina. Of course, the Usos, very early days for them, and Tamina, of course, in WWE at that point. Very, very baby faces. In fact, quite a few people still in WWE now. How young they look when you look back at that. But it's going to be a fun one to go through, ladies and gentlemen. But just to quickly say before we start off, get involved with your comments if you want to. We've got with your memories of this show. We'd love to know what you do remember, what you don't remember, perhaps how you've seen how they progress now as well. It's fun to talk about the superstars, especially with quite a few of them are still in WWE now. And I want to say as well, towards the end of this episode, I want to talk about the Rewind Retro series on this channel. Obviously, I want to do something that's going to work for the viewers on this channel, that people that come to watch this, what is it that works best with the retro content for you? But before we get started, let's go into it then, and let's talk about Fatal 4-Way. Of course, it took place in June of 2010. It was at the Nassau Coliseum in Long Island, New York. We have the commentary team of Michael Cole, Jerry the King Lawler, and Matt Striker. Matt Striker, of course, more famous for his Lucha Underground work, it feels these days. In WWE, was probably a bit green at the time. But the intro package for this show was something I wanted to talk to you about, Steve, because for me, there wasn't really too much to take away from this, really. They sort of presented the main event, of course, like we said, Cena, Orton, Edge, and Sheamus, kind of like they're the 4 people going for the WWE Championship, but it was almost like it's the worst odds for a champion, 25% chance of winning. And of course, when it comes to the World Heavyweight title match, the story mainly in the intro package was more focused on Kane looking to find out who took out The Undertaker, because of course, The Undertaker originally was meant to be involved in the Heavyweight Championship Fatal 4-Way match. Of course, Rey Mysterio would later take his place because The Undertaker was found in a vegetated state. So what were your thoughts when you first saw this video package? Because for me, the first thing I thought was, well, there's a bit of storylines to go with this at least, but for the World Heavyweight title, but not so much for the WWE title.
Yeah, I mean, the placing of the World Heavyweight Championship alone just shows how badly this title was booked back in the day. Just because you could obviously tell it wasn't Vince's favorite championship, and the fact that they use the word vegetated state when they're talking about the Undertaker, I just think is like, who is honestly writing this crap? It is honestly some diabolical writing for it, but. It was all more about this main event than anything else, and yeah, Kane's revenge, which we'll get into later. It was kind of like I sort of looked forward into the future and what sort of happened going forward, and it was like it really plays no event going forward after this. It's kind of like they use it for the one match, and that's it, really. Like, I don't know what happens afterwards with it.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the beauty of hindsight because obviously we're not watching this. We didn't review this show like now, and it's just like that's
Mm.
it. Like you said, we had the ability to look in and say where did it lead to further on, so we can give you those answers as well here today, which is quite fun to see. Obviously, we started off the show though without a match. It was actually Vince McMahon coming out and informing us that Bret Hart, the general manager, would not be there due to the fact that the Nexus attack on Raw. We've seen. Obviously, Bret was actually put into a limo by the Nexus and it was driven into other cars and limos. I mean, obviously, we talk about the modern day of WWE very quickly about budget cuts. Obviously, that's usually referred to a lot of the talent. I don't see limos getting trashed on a weekly basis anymore. There was a lot of damage done in that car park with Bret Hart.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking. And like initially, when this started playing, because of the way the poster's done and the way the Red Cross was, I thought this was in England. And I was looking, and I looked at that limo, and I went, "That's a Yank license plate. This thing's gone wrong here." And I had to double check it. It was like, "Oh no, wait, it's not actually in England. It's just me being stupid." But yeah, you don't see that. Most of the time now, it's ambulances getting trashed, or if it's Braun Strowman tipping over a lorry and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, you just don't, you can tell between sort of Attitude Era and 2010, not much about the show actually changes in production value. It's kind of all the same, really. Every time they do this kind of stuff, it is the same stuff. Since then, we've obviously got more lights, more bigger Titantron, all this kind of stuff, all this glitz and glamour. Yeah, you can. It's shocking to see how little the product had changed in 20 years when they put this show on.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, obviously, it was the next question I was going to ask you was the staging. Obviously, we've seen something that it's kind of a bit of a basic looking stage here because obviously we're in the days of pay per views where yeah, we still could see like the fancy backlashes. We could still see the fact, but with this one, it was more just the four with the Tron to symbolize the fatal four way. It was kind of simple but effective here for the Nassau Coliseum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you. I remember the old backlashes that used to have the giant like scaffolding rigs coming down, and then whenever they do, for instance, TLC or whatever, they'd have all the ladders up and all this kind. And they'd make a representation of it. This was probably one of the cheapest ones that you probably ever see them do back then because there was very minimal put into the production of it.
Absolutely, no, I have to agree 100% there with you. And obviously, Vince McMahon obviously making that announcement. And obviously, I'd forgotten Bret Hart was GM at this point. So it was news to me anyway. He was like, oh, we're not going to see him tonight. Didn't realize he'd be on the show. But yeah, I mean, he wasn't going to be there. That obviously culminates with SummerSlam, obviously, with the Nexus storyline. We'll be talking more about Nexus, obviously, in the main event of this retro review. But obviously, that leads to what gets us to our opener because as Vince McMahon is leaving, obviously our opening contest is going to be for the Intercontinental Championship, and that just happens to be the champion Kofi Kingston defending against the chosen one, Drew McIntyre, for the Intercontinental Championship. Now, like I say there, the chosen one, that's how Vince brought him in back in the day. If you remember how it all started for Drew. Drew whispering in Vince's ear, obviously, sort of, getting a little bit of, I don't know, a few words in before he goes to the ring, let's say. And we see what this feud has started over. Drew being the one that was bullying Teddy Long as well, forces a match for Teddy where he has to lay down. Drew humiliates further until Kofi comes out to make the save. Of course, Matt Hardy as well comes out also. But security gets involved and that sort of gets Drew to get the upper hand with future shot DDTs being put on both Kofi and Matt Hardy in the build-up here. Teddy Long is called out as well by Drew McIntyre, says to him he's ordered to sit at ringside through this match of orders and Vince McMahon, and when Drew wins, Teddy has to hand the IC title to him. What were your thoughts then when you looked at this and you thought to yourself, well, we've got a bit of storyline narrative here, but what are your feelings with the build-up here with Teddy Long?
I'll be honest with you, without the context of it all, and really knowing what, like I say, we saw like the flashbacks and all this kind of stuff, what had gone into it, but just the general like one seeing Drew as this really green sort of, and his voice almost like he hasn't hit puberty yet is just a general shock in itself. But it was nice seeing Kofi come out as the Jamaican superstar, because he's famously not from Jamaica, but again, it was all this nostalgia. I was getting more about this. Especially with Drew with his Broken Dreams theme song. But do you know what? For an opening match, I thought this was a really good match. I thought like you couldn't really go bad, couldn't go wrong with these two superstars. And it's for a pay-per-view nowadays, you don't really see a lot of like you just normally have the match. There's like the package, and then there's the match, a video package, and the match, and there's not normally a lot of this involvement with people like GMs and stuff like that. So it's a nice sort of flashback to what they can do and what they used to do with their shows.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a solid point you make there because obviously we have something to be invested in. It's not just a match and a story and just tell it in the ring. There's actually a bit of layers to this, and there's further layers because we know the fact that the match here is Kofi and Drew, but we know Teddy's on the outside. We know that Teddy, of course, the GM for SmackDown, is being humiliated, undermined as well by Drew McIntyre, who should be falling in place to Teddy, but has got Vince in his back pocket to stop it. As well, Matt Hardy, suspended from all of WWE at this point, also has problems with Drew McIntyre. So there's different ingredients going all throughout this opening match, but it's a good match here. Like you say, Kofi and Drew, good chemistry in the ring. Obviously, there's a couple of fun spots that I quite like. The tilt-a-whirl that went into a DDT from Kofi onto Drew.
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really good. I like the other fun spot where Kofi sort of jumps onto the corner. His sort of legs kind of go over the top rope on the buckles where he starts doing the 10 punches. Drew catches him and then throws him over into a powerbomb. I thought it was a beautiful looking spot.
Yeah, the Kofi's physique has changed drastically in like 13 years because he looked jacked when he was in 2010, and if it hadn't been for Big Show chopping his chest and destroying it completely, Kofi would still look the same. But yeah, Kofi was he's pulling off stuff now. Like, don't get me wrong, he's 13 years older, but the stuff that he was pulling off is a nice reminder of the stuff that Kofi can do or used to do. So yeah, I said it was thoroughly enjoyable, and some of the stuff that it was still shocking to see some of the stuff because just like you're still trying, like, we've watched wrestling for 30 plus years, so it's very weird to go back and watch the product from 15 years ago and see the wrestling style and see how much these wrestlers have changed over that time. But no, I was to say it's thoroughly entertained by this one.
Absolutely, yeah. It was, as you would say, it's original spots. It's something that's a bit different, something out of the norm that you wouldn't necessarily see even today. For that match, it was unique for that, and it's one of the reasons maybe you should go and just watch those couple of spots alone. But just before we go into the finish of the match, quickly, just want to say hello to Eric Douglas and says, "How are we doing? We are doing very well, Eric, thank you for checking the stream out. Hope you were keeping well. What are your memories of Fatal 4-Way from 2010? Have you seen the show? Feel free to drop in your thoughts and memories from this show. But as we go then into the finish of this match, it actually finishes the start with a ref bump. Kofi's kind of got his legs wrapped around. It's sort of like a headlock submission, but it gets thrown into the referee, knocks him out. Drew hits his future shot DDT. And of course, there's no ref to do the count. So he calls Teddy Long to get into the ring. I think he even throws him in the ring in the end, forces Teddy to wear the referee shirt to go and make that count. Teddy reluctantly eventually gets into place, counts the 1, counts the 2, and then just doesn't count the 3. You just see his face almost as that he just sort of welds up like he's going to cry, but he's like, I'm not taking this. You just see him shake his head like, no, I'm not doing it. For me, it was a really beautiful spot. The crowd really popped really well for it as well. So it shows that the story and narrative has worked very well for this as well. Obviously, he gets cornered afterwards by Drew McIntyre. And Drew says, look, the next time now, you better make that 3 count. At the same time, Matt Hardy comes over the barricade, comes in, hits the twist of fate of Drew McIntyre. Again, remind you, Matt Hardy is suspended, shouldn't be there. Kofi then hits his Trouble in Paradise finisher. And of course, Teddy does make that count 1, 2, 3, and Kofi retains the Intercontinental Championship. Well, a great way to open the show for me. That the match was fine at the start, but actually this storyline narrative that played into the finish of the match was really well executed and really well done, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it gave you that's a prime example of a match that gives you reason to then go and watch Raw and SmackDown the following week.
Yes.
So, do you know what I mean? It just delivered everything. It gave you something to go, right, I need to tune in this week to watch it. Little things that added to it as well. The fact that Teddy did a normal count instead of a fast count, I thought was great because it showed that Teddy was although he didn't count the 3 when Drew did it, but he still counted it fairly. And that's why everyone loves Teddy Long, man. But yeah, it was just overall, just say a thoroughly entertaining match. Longest match on the card as well, which was quite shocking. Say it would be in the opening match, but I'd say I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely there. I'm going to call up my Wikipedia to get the time count stamps for these matches in a couple of seconds' time. But obviously...
16 minutes 29, I can tell you.
There you go. Thank you very much. See, man that's prepared. I love that. Fantastic.
Apologies. It's the second longest match. I didn't realise it. I hadn't scrolled up enough.
It's definitely one of the longest matches on this show,
Yeah.
nonetheless. But the thing is, we always give the star ratings as well, and of course that means we have to check in with our good friend Dave Meltzer. Another bit of Dave Meltzer. He's given 3 stars for this match. I mean, for me, I think that's quite an accurate score here to give for this match for an opener. What were your thoughts? How would you give this as out of 5 stars?
I think going on to, after watching the whole pay-per-view, I think 3 stars is a fair result, but I think after every other match on the card, I'd probably have to say 3.5. I'd be a bit more generous just because I think it added a lot more story-wise than what most of the other matches added. Apart from, like, say, 2 or 3 of the matches, I think it was one of the better story-delivered matches.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the placement of this on the card was fantastic as well, because it really gave a good feeling at the start of the show. Did a good job all around. But we move backstage in the meantime, and we've got the interview at Savannah. I don't really remember her, I'll be honest, but she was interviewing the Hart Dynasty, asking if they were ready to face the Usos and Tamina later. David Boy Smith Jr. in particular said that Brett was like a father to him for the last 8 years, and of course this was on Father's Day as well. They will fight on Father's Day, and they just basically said that they were going to do it for Brett, which was just what I said on the tin backstage. We move then on back to the ring. We got our second match of the night. It's for the Divas Championship, our first fatal 4-way match of the show as well. Eve Torres versus Maryse versus Alicia Fox versus Gail Kim. Now, I'll go into a bit of detail before I come to you, Steve. I think this was not really given so much time, if we're being brutally honest. I've got the times in front of me now. Only 5 minutes and 47 seconds. Not long enough, in my opinion. But they did what I think they needed to do. They set the tone for the evening. The early story of breaking up each other's pins and submissions, even when submissions were going on at the same time. The nervousness of the fact that one would submit. So Gail Kim broke her submission to break up the other one. There was a fun spot, though, with Alicia being in a house of pain. That was a camel clutch from Eve and a Boston Crab from Gail at the same time as well. Matt Striker butchers a name of a missile drop kick as well in this match, if you want to go and see that. But most importantly is the finish of this match, I guess. Eve hits a rolling net breaker, and she hits a moonsault on Maryse. Maryse is out of it in the ring as Eve goes to make the pin. Alicia breaks it up, throws Eve out of the ring, and pins Maryse to become the brand new Divas champion. What were your thoughts then of this fatal 4-way match between the 4 ladies?
In the politest way possible, but you can tell which one of these 4 is a wrestler. Because Gail Kim was the standout for me in this. She hit all her spots correctly. She delivered everything great. I thought she was the best one in this match. And you can see this is a good kick of reality to see how far women's wrestling has come, because women's wrestling wasn't great back in the 2010s. It hasn't been great. Well, it wasn't great. It hasn't been great since the women's revolution, really. But you can see the quality difference. And to sit there and think that Gail Kim was the one that ended up leaving WWE, and the other 3 ended up going on and having bigger careers in the WWE, I think is quite criminal, because for wrestling, Gail Kim was, for me, 100% the best one out of a lot of them, and it's just a shame. But then again, she went on to TNA and she ended up having a fantastic career, so good on her for at least doing something with her career.
Absolutely, one of the greatest knockouts of all time in Impact history, and she still gets called out from some of the top Impact knockouts to this day for matches, even though she's now retired. But like you say, there was a couple of fun moments in this match. But yeah, I do feel that this was more setting the tone. We are very fortunate of what we get today in comparison to back then. But the ladies, I think for me, that it doesn't help when you've got to tell a story in less than 6 minutes. You've got to hit these spots in that time. If Cena, Orton, Edge, and Sheamus, the main event, had that length of time to tell their story, it would struggle to get as good a rating of a match. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that those performers are some of the greatest of all time, but at the same time, to tell a story, to get a narrative that good in that time, I think it's a bit unfair on the ladies. Had they more time to work with, I think perhaps maybe a better story could have been told in this match. But our good friend Mr. Dave Meltzer has only given this half a star on the rating. For me, I think that's a little bit harsh, if I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to go for a 1.5. What would you give this as a rating?
I'd probably say a 1, and that's purely on the basis that Gail Kim was the standout for me. I think if you'd have put someone else in there who wasn't of a higher caliber as Gail Kim, I think this really would have stunk the place out. But like I said, I'll go for a 1 star for it.
Absolutely. Can I just ask your opinion as well? Obviously, we don't follow the reign afterwards, but the thoughts of Alicia Fox walking away as the champion. Obviously, for me, that took me by surprise. I'd forgotten that she won this match.
Yeah, I mean it's almost a forgettable time in women's wrestling with the whole Divas Championship thing. But uh, imagine out of the four of them, three of them were Divas champion at one point, and Gail Kim was the only one. That just says it all for me. I think if you've got that three of the four of these were future Divas champions or previous Divas champions, and the best one of a lot of them wasn't, just shows what we were dealing with back then.
Absolutely, indeed. There, Eric's favorite moment. I don't think this happened. Priest winning the world title. I think we'll have to wait a while for that one, Eric. There, certainly back in 2010. I don't think he'd even started in Ring of Honor back then. But hey, we will move on in the meantime there, and we'll move on to going basically backstage again. We have a Big Show and Rey Mysterio, and basically saying it's every man for himself, and they'll do what it takes to win. A Big Show is happy to land his fist on Rey, puts the fist next to Rey's head, about the same size, but Rey reminds Big Show that his heart is bigger than that. Interesting backstage. It just adds a bit of narrative. We know that everyone's going to be facing each other, but we do move on to what was definitely one of my favorite matches of the night. I'm going to tell you nice and early this one: Evan Bourne versus Chris Jericho. I like a bit of narrative put before the match of this one as well. The King actually saying that Chris Jericho not been himself of late, self-doubt potentially creeping in. Jericho apparently lost the match against Evan Bourne by DQ on Raw because Evan had kicked out of the code breaker. Jericho gets on the mic. He says that he isn't the hot topic right now, despite being the fact that everyone at 25 and under is the reason they're watching, and everyone that's over that, he said that this is the reason they're still watching WWE at that time. He's the top of the mountain, and the reason everyone watches WWE. Jericho says he's got a target on his back, and Bourne is trying to make a name for himself at his expense. What did you feel by just sort of hearing what Jerry Lawler had to say and hearing Jericho's promo before his match?
Again, proves to me why I believe Chris Jericho is one of the GOATs. He's not wrong in what he's saying. Like,
No.
he is one of the main reasons why people under 25 are watching. He's the main reason why people over 25 were still watching. It's factually accurate for me. I said I love Chris Jericho. He is on my Mount Rushmore, and putting him in with Evan Bourne, who at the time was one of the most exciting wrestlers in the WWE. It just was just destined to be great, man. And like I said, Evan Bourne doing that high flying style, Chris Jericho just being Chris Jericho. This was just fantastic.
It really was. I mean, like you say, you have the striking and aerial ability of Evan Bourne against the technical masterclass of Chris Jericho. These had some fantastic exchanges for the time that they were given in the ring. Obviously, just for people that are wondering how long this went for, 12 minutes and 2 seconds. And I can say it's worth every minute of it. I mean, literally, it was a fast-paced match as well. One of my favorite spots, though, Evan does this sort of standing up meteor on Jericho, but Jericho kind of rolls it through to do the balls of Jericho. How beautiful was that spot?
Oh, amazing! Like it was. I was so gutted when Evan Bourne left WWE, because for me, he was like early cruiserweight material. Like, he was his style just had some of that stuff that we now see today in it, and it was just so exciting to watch. And yeah, like you said, the spot where he does the meteor into the walls of Jericho. This just shows the quality that these two can bring to a match, and they absolutely delivered.
They really, really did. Obviously, the match continues further. There's a shooting star press attempt where, from Evan Bourne, he lands on his feet. Jericho goes straight and hits the code breaker. I like the fact that Jericho took time as well before he went to go and make that pin, because he was still a bit groggy himself. That allowed, obviously, for the kick out with 2 from Evan Bourne, so the finisher is still protected from Jericho's sakes. Jericho tells Bourne to stay down. Of course, goes for the walls of Jericho. But Bourne uses a guillotine to then land into a DDT. Fun looking reversal. Really enjoyed that. More reversals happened to stop the shooting star press, but Jericho eventually is suplexed off the top rope, obviously face first, hitting the canvas, and then Evan hits the shooting star press on Jericho's back and actually gets the pin 1, 2, 3. So the self down, Chris Jericho, who's not been himself, loses to Evan Bourne, which arguably is a shocking result. And obviously, King Evan said on commentary at the time, had to be the biggest win of Evan Bourne's career, which of course I, like yourself, was a big Evan Bourne fan at that point. I remember, this is one of the few things I remember from this show, watching it first time around. I remember, this was one of the biggest moments for Evan Bourne. And just remember being shocked that he actually won that match then. Obviously not the same shock watching this time, but for me, I still don't underestimate it. It reminded me a little bit, if you go to the modern day, because Chris Jericho Not much different now. He still says the same stuff. Like you say, same song lyrics. You watch this because of me. You watch AEW because of me. But just recently, Action Andretti, what did he do? He did the same thing. He made a star out of someone within 10, 15 minutes on national television on Dynamite. Evan Bourne attempted to do the same here. Chris Jericho, someone who knows who to give back to the business.
Exactly. I mean, anyone that can do a shooting star press is instantly rememberable in my books. Him, Billy Kidman, the host of other names. Like, whenever I saw someone doing a shooting star press, I was instantly sold on that person. I was like, it's just an amazing feat. But even like little things like the way that the way they didn't communicate in it. So, for instance, that when they go to do the finish, Chris Jericho rolls, but he rolls to a certain point, and even Evan Bourne instantly looks and goes, "Oh wait, I've got to go to that turn," and he just runs, goes around, literally goes to the opposite side of the ring to hit that shooting star press and finish it. Just a great match.
Yeah, really solid from start to finish. I've got to say, for me, I think it's my favorite match of the night. It really is. I'm going to say it now.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think for everything that comes afterwards, I think this is probably match of the night for me as well.
Absolutely. Dave Meltzer gives this a 4-star rating. For me, I was going to go on the 3.5 area myself, but what would be your rating?
I'd agree with Meltzer. I think the 4 out of 5 is justified. I think they put on a great match, and like I said, match of the night, match of the card for me.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a win-win. If you've got an opportunity to watch one match on this show, go and watch that one. It is absolutely sublime. We will then move things on because we have the World Heavyweight title match coming up next now. Obviously, that is going to be Jack Swagger, of course, as we mentioned earlier, defending against the Big Show, CM Punk, and Rey Mysterio for the World Heavyweight Championship. We have a video package, though, of course, and it's not really about the 4 superstars feuding with each other. It's more about the fact the Undertaker originally qualified for the match, but his brother Kane had found the Undertaker in a vegetated state. We've mentioned this already. Kane confronts everybody in the match, saying that he will get vengeance for his brother, even suggested that not one man could do it. Perhaps all 4 did it. It'll be a bad, fatal night on Sunday for the guilty party. Obviously, before even going into the match then, thoughts on that video package?
This, again, it just proves the point of how badly that World Heavyweight title was booked. The fact that the focus is on an outside storyline and has nothing to do with the title whatsoever just shows how badly this championship was booked. But, and I will say this now, this is going to be the most controversial thing you'll ever hear me say. Killswitch Engage, The Fire Burns, is CM Punk's best theme tune over Cult of Personality.
Do you know what? As controversial as that may sound, I really like Killswitch Engage. For me, it's just when you hear it, because now we're used to hearing Living Colour each and every time. We will sing it out. That's what we do. But when I hear Killswitch Engage, I'm like, oh, it's been a while. You know, we just feel like old school Punk. You know, it's just it's an absolute banger. To be fair, you can't go wrong with either. And just to be fair, quickly, not a big Jack Swagger fan, even though I like his hat as well. I've got to say. I actually don't mind Jack Swagger's theme song at this point as well.
It's catchy, but my biggest problem is it's Jack Swagger. At the end of the day, I was so checked out at this point. Unfortunately, one of my biggest memories of the World Heavyweight Championship is the fact that Jack Swagger was champion. It's like if someone says to me, "Give me one of your name me someone who was World Heavyweight Champion," my brain instantly goes, "Oh well, Jack Swagger was World Heavyweight Champion." I was not his biggest fan at all in this.
Do you know, I was back in like 2008, 2009, his ECW run. I was looked at him and I was like, this guy's got something, but obviously didn't do much talking. I think he needed a mouthpiece then. But you know, we mentioned him in the last match. Who was the guy that put Jack Swagger over? It's Chris Jericho. Of course, Jack Swagger winning Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 26 and then cashing it in the SmackDown afterwards. It's just a shame after that Jack Swagger's material was god awful that he had for his title run. Obviously, I remember his feud with the Big Show. I mentioned this well off air. The fact he was doing his school accolades for 15 minutes with trophies everywhere in the SmackDown ring was god awful. And the fact that Big Show came to make the save as well it made things even worse at the time. But yeah, not my favorite period.
For me personally, he just felt like his gimmick never changed. He was just always the same thing, this patriotic symbol. And like when Swagger essentially didn't get the gimmick over and they brought in who was his manager?
Zeb Coulter.
Zeb Coulter, yeah, when they brought in Zeb Coulter, and then Zeb Coulter just takes the gimmick and moves it on to Alberto Del Rio at some point in the future, and it's like it just seemed like they were trying to get this patriotic character over, and it just never works. It's kind of the same now with Lacey Evans, like they're trying to do the whole, oh, I was a Marine, do you know what I mean? I was part of the US Army. Apologies, can't remember which one it was, but these gimmicks just never seem to work, and they just tried so long with Jack Swagger to get that over.
Especially when they're heel as well. Like say, Lacey being a heel, Jack Swagger being a heel. It's like it works if it's like, you know. I mean, I don't know if Mr. America works. It's probably not the best example, but you know, back in the 90s, the Patriot worked for a while. That they did have those gimmicks in those times, but it doesn't feel like it connects as well. Like I say, especially for a bad person, you want to separate.
It seems like every decade we get at least one of these patriarch gimmicks. Like it was Luger back in the 90s. You know what I mean? Being when he was doing all this kind of stuff, and then you went on to Jack Swagger, and they were on to Lacey Evans, and it was like. It just, I don't know what, it's just Vince has got this fascination with patriotic gimmicks.
Absolutely, no, you're spot on with that indeed there. But let's go into some of the fun moments of this match, because there are a few. Big Show putting Ray into the ring over the top rope by just grabbing his head and literally
beautiful.
Just did that. I thought it was really cool. Yeah, just a lovely way it was done. And there was a double German suplex as well from Jack Swagger onto CM Punk and Rey Mysterio as well. Obviously, you didn't expect the Big Show to come out of my mouth there, I'm pretty sure. But I thought that was quite a fun-looking spot as well for the time. Big Show was taken out, though. Of course, he had his steps to his knees by Swagger. At a 619, Ray goes swinging around the ring pole to hit the Big Show. And then CM Punk jumping off the top rope as well to leave Show out on the floor. The camera was on there too long, though. We did see CM Punk, if you look close enough, just tap the Big Show, like just check he's all right afterwards. But obviously, this was the point where Kane came out, and he comes out with a casket. Obviously, he said he was going to go for the people with a problem, basically, where everyone's sort of laid out in the ring at this point. And obviously, he made sure his target was CM Punk of everybody. And CM Punk was sort of taken outside, chokeslammed him into the casket. Of course, he's part of the Straight Edge Society, so that would make sense then from Kane saying it could take more than one person. Gallows comes out to actually make the save, and Punk can leave as well. And we should mention, something I've not mentioned so far, this is the period as well CM Punk is wearing his face mask, wearing the mask like Rey Mysterio as well, because he's had his head shaved as well, his luchador mask as well. So it was just interesting seeing. He looked like Tempest from Wrestle Talk for me. But anyway, Kane chased him away afterwards. So this took CM Punk away from the match entirely. And obviously then we got back to where we were in the ring. And this is the moment where Rey Mysterio hits the 619, does a springboard splash, and becomes your brand new World Heavyweight Champion. What were your thoughts with this match? Obviously, I know already that some of this is nonsense.
Looking into the future, just a lot of this didn't make sense. Like, why is Kane bringing a casket out of all things? I mean, like I said to you before, I went and looked ahead to CM Punk's matches for the rest of 2010, and he loses to Kane on a SmackDown. And it's like, so what was the point of the casket? Unless you're going to do like a Buried Alive match or something, would make perfect sense. But there's bits like that just don't play off going forward. And then I think later on, Kane ends up winning Money in the Bank.
Yes.
And it was like, and that's the night he cashes in the same night over Rey Mysterio as well, and wins the World Heavyweight title from Rey Mysterio. So I can kind of see some intertwine, like obviously with Mysterio winning the title in this match because of Kane's interference, but like there's just so many bits going forward that don't make sense. And for what it was, I'm not a Big Show fan. To be fair, this isn't bad from Big Show. I've seen him. Like, nothing's going to ever be Big Show doing Hulk Hogan impression for me, because I thought that was fantastic. That is the best Big Show match I've ever seen when he comes out dressed as Hogan. But I felt he was all right. Swagger done some good stuff, just not a fan of the gimmick. Punk, it just unfortunately this is kind of like, you can still see that he's trying to push to be the number one, and it's just not happening. And the Straight Edge Society was a great faction. And Rey Mysterio, I think he's just the safest bet, unfortunately. It's just the case. But again, middle of the cards for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's just what it is with that title.
Absolutely. The match is fine. There's nothing really wrong with the match. It's just the case of when Kane makes the interference, it just shows that the story isn't really about the four men in the ring. It's not even about the World Heavyweight Championship. It's about Kane finding who it's going to be. And of course, later on, like you mentioned the story there, Kane wins the world title at Money in the Bank after winning Money in the Bank. He was at that point the fastest person to cash it in. I think it was like 50 minutes or so. And of course, we later learned out the person who took out The Undertaker was Kane. So we had the rivalry with Kane and The Undertaker for, I think, was like the third or fourth time. And I think that culminated Hell in a Cell. So, I mean, that's where the world title ended up as a destination. So it was all right for the world title in the end. But it's just the fact that for this match, it felt like that all the four people in it were kind of just, they were background players, even though they were meant to be the forefront of, it's filler for a world title match, which is just, it's something that I'm not quite sure I like the digestion of that. But that's just me personally. But again, we'll go to our good friend Dave Meltz, who gives this a 2.5 star. I think that could be just about right, because I think that the match itself, so the in-ring action is fine. There's nothing wrong with the in-ring action.
Yeah, it's pretty much, apologies. It's
the
pretty much
Rumble.
it's pretty much a TV match essentially. Like you could have got away with having this on a Raw or a SmackDown, but 2.5 seems pretty fine. Just fair enough, straight down the middle.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, straight down the middle for this. So we'll go for the 2.5 star there for you before we move on then to our next match. Of course, we have, just before we do actually, there's a John Cena interview backstage. He's asked about the Nexus. Of course, the Nexus have been running right on Monday Night Raw at this point. Cena believes there's been an unspoken agreement that superstars will unite against the Nexus if it's, as the group has made it, us versus them. When asked about the Fatal 4-Way with 2 title changes in the night so far, another key ingredient, Ray winning the World Heavyweight title, Alicia Fox winning the Divas title, Cena said he's not going up there to lose. Whoever wins, though, they're going to have to earn it. Interesting quote from John Cena. Rather than promising victory, saying he's not going up there to lose. It's kind of not the most great pep talk from Big Match John that we've ever seen. But hey.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's almost feeding you the answer or the result that's about to happen. Really, it's just one of them things. But it just this was all obviously building towards, was it Survivor Series or SummerSlam? Which one was it where they had the big face off with the Nexus?
Originally SummerSlam, but it carried on, I think, to Survivor Series.
What was the one where Daniel Bryan came back?
It was SummerSlam.
SummerSlam, right? Yeah. So that's what this was just a preemptive build to that for me. So it's just John Cena being John Cena, really, and just trying to get to the end point of anything.
Absolutely, indeed, there. And obviously, we have the United States Championship as our following contest after this. Match 5 of the show will be The Miz versus R-Truth. I'm going to say it's nice and quickly. The Miz does R-Truth's theme song on the way to the ring with new lyrics. God awful. Was going to Google it, didn't bother because I thought I'd spare your eardrums. But at the same time,
so painful listening to R-Truth's entrance twice in a row. Like when Miz done it, and then I had to listen to it again, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, don't get me wrong, R-Truth does it well because it's a hype for the crowd. Really, it's what it is. But then once is enough, man. It was so painful.
Absolutely. And the one bit of commentary I do quite like, though, on the show, Jerry Lawler saying, like, put out like a pimple is one of R-Truth's lyrics. He says, that's the one I remember. And Matt Strong goes, that's the thing you remember from R-Truth's theme songs? Like, yeah, of course it would be What's Up. But I thought that was mildly entertaining.
I'll tell you what, just before you get into it, right, I actually, looking at Miz's character and how he was acting back in 2010, I actually kind of preferred that version of Miz because he seemed to have a bit more aggression about him. I just like it when he was even doing the bit where I'm the Miz and I'm awesome. I felt it more than what he does now. Now he just seems like it's really sort of just like half fed in nowadays. So just like, don't get me wrong, it's the same character 13 years later, but he just seemed to have more passion in 2010.
Yeah, I mean, I think these days he kind of is. I think acceptance of his role. He has a role in WWE. Like I say, then he was kind of building himself up the ladder to become an eventual WWE champion. Of course, the next year at WrestleMania, he was main eventing it. So he was on the rise. He won Money in the Bank for the Raw side just a month later. But at the same time now, Miz is kind of, he was world champion a couple of years ago, but he kind of has that role now where he's putting other talent over. He's been in the company for a long time. I think his job is to get other people over. And I think even when you look at the Royal Rumble this year, he was number 3. He was the first person eliminated. WrestleMania, he's losing to Snoop Dogg and probably getting in the way of Shane's quads. But at the same time, it's Miz is there to do a job, and that's the job. And I think, like you say, Miz back then, there was more fire and desire at that point. I think Miz still has that fire and desire these days, but it's channeled in different direction and different energy. But obviously, the Miz has only just won the United States Championship, and funnily enough, he won it in a fatal four-way match on Monday Night Raw, defeating the former champion R-Truth. Of course, John Morrison and Zack Ryder win the match as well. John Morrison doing the work with the Starship Pain, and Miz stealing the pinfall victory. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what happened then to get him the championship. Going into this, I mean, the match is quite hard fought. The Miz is targeting R-Truth's ribs before there's a comeback. Suplex into a stunner from R-Truth. Fun looking spot, quite like that. But a roll up leads a lot of roll ups towards the end of this match here, which also leads to the finish. Truth attempts a sort of forward roll up, but the Miz sort of counters it because the pressure on the ribs for R-Truth didn't allow him to be able to kick out. I was a bit disappointed this didn't finish with an actual finisher, but the story of the match, it kind of made sense at the same time. For me, this match was kind of just filler on the show.
Yeah, again, another one that could have easily just passed for TV time, in all fairness. But
Yeah.
at least it was, like you said, that the finish played into the story of the match, essentially, where Miz was working on the ribs, and it was the ribs that ended up costing him the match. So I can appreciate it from that aspect, because we see so many times nowadays that people will do stuff like, oh, he's working on the leg, he's working an ankle, he's working an arm. 5 minutes later, oh yeah, I'm fine. It's no longer sold for the rest of the match. So I can appreciate it for that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'll take as a positive, and I think that will actually help me in the star rating. Something that I didn't realize whilst watching it, time must have flown by for me. This match is 13 minutes long. I didn't realize that when I was watching it. But yeah, there was quite a bit of time given to this match. But overall,
but then that can also be a critique for it, because for it being 13 minutes long, there's not a lot of great stuff that really happens in it. There's not a lot of hot spots in it. It is essentially a very TV match.
It is. I mean, that's the thing. I when I do these, I try to make as much notes as possible. I want to give as much detail of the matches as possible. Sometimes I can get overexcited and can literally give you about 20 minutes of a 25-minute match. So I've tried to force that away. But here there wasn't so much that, it's typical. Babyface starts off, Miz then gets some works on the body, and then we get the comeback. Obviously, we get the near falls, and that's pretty much the match. There's not much I can give to you. I'm almost, you don't want to hear Miz did a rest lock for 20 seconds of it. You don't want to hear that stuff in that match. So there's just not that detail. It's a TV match. That's pretty much what it is. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't really belong on pay-per-view.
It's a pretty bang average wrestling match.
It is. Absolutely is. But what's your star rating for it?
I'm trying to think what else I rated everything else. I'd be generous and say a 2. I think just because I can't rate it worse than the ladies match, and I gave that a 1. And I'm trying to think what else I rated. Yeah, I'm just gonna say a 2. I think that's a fair judgment on it.
For me, I'm going to go 1.75, just purely because I found this probably one of the least interesting matches on the show. And they're fine workers, but like we said, we've been over it already. I don't want to repeat myself, but yeah, for me, there wasn't enough to keep me gripped. And the women's match, I think I give a slightly lower rating, but I was more invested in that match than I was in this match. So that's
because there was 4 competitors. That's what I mean. There was the dynamic to that match that made you pay attention more.
I think that could be what it is. I'm afraid.
What did Meltzer give this, by the way?
Well, just funny you asked that question. Meltzer gives this 2.25 stars.
There you go. It's a pretty bang average match then from Dave Meltzer as well.
There you go. It's ticked all the boxes from everybody. Average. That's what we're going to do. I preferred when they were a team. I think that's when it was better. But we'll move backstage anyway. Edge has an interview. He's focused on becoming the new champion. He says that Cena's concerned after the two new champions have been crowned. Randy's not 100% after a separated shoulder. And Sheamus doesn't belong with the other 3. Sheamus only had 1 WrestleMania compared to the other 3 who have had 12 main events combined. Yeah. Incredible statistic there from Edge. I like that statistic, but also maybe a hint towards that main event there, but we'll come back to that note later on. In the meantime, we'll go on to what was our 6th match of the show, and it was a mixed tag team match. It was the Hart Dynasty, of course, Tyson Kidd, Natalia, and Davey Boy Smith Jr. And of course, they're going against the fresh-faced Usos and Tamina, who had not long debuted in WWE. This match here, just to go for a timestamp for everybody, 9 minutes and 28 seconds. thought this match was okay, actually. A couple of interesting notes, a couple of bits I really liked, actually. Tyson Kidd jumping off the apron early doors is caught into a Samoan drop into the barricade. It looked quite a brutal looking spot there to give the heels the advantage. Tyson, though, actually, once the comeback is made, takes out the Usos by doing a springboard flip from the top rope to the floor, taking everybody out. And that left the ladies to finish off this match. Tamina missing her splash, and she was hit with a spinning clothesline, which gave a victory for Natalya and the Hart Dynasty. All in all, this match, I think, was just pleasing for the eye. Again, could argue it's another television match, not much more to it, but I did quite enjoy it for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think more than anything, I appreciated Tyson Kidd because obviously everything that happened with him, and then him having to retire and stuff. But seeing him do some of the stuff that he was known for, just was to say a nice reminder for everything. I don't personally know why it was a 6-person match instead of just a normal tag match for the tag team titles, because weren't the Hart Dynasty like unified tag team champions at this point? So
yeah,
I don't know. So, but yeah, again, and it was a very strange place to have a 6-person tag match. The penultimate match on the card, I thought was very weird. But again, it was okay. There was some good spots in it. I'm a big fan of tag team wrestling, so I always love watching these tag team dynamics. Yeah, it was an okay match.
It was an okay match, and I've got to say very quickly, you made a shout about Tyson Kidd. Have to agree, the guy was flawless throughout the match. He's fantastic. You think back some of his other matches. One of my favorites, I think, was Neville in NXT at the top of one of the takeovers, was incredible. But it's such a shame that he's not still doing what he's doing now. But I really enjoyed the Hart Dynasty back in the day. I think that this was dragged out because of the fact there wasn't many tag teams on Raw at the time. The Usos had just come in, and they were already the top contenders for the tag team titles with Tamina. It's just interesting to see as well how far. We just seen WrestleMania 39, for those watching this well into the future, had not long just happened. The Usos main evented that show with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens on night one, just to see now where they near enough started in WWE, to how far they've come. Tremendous accomplishment and achievement from a team at the time, which we expect to do good things, but I think that they've shown from where they started to where they are, definitely one of the best tag teams of all time when you look at it, when they hang up their boots.
But even when they come in, they were still they were a hot team when they came in as well, even with the gimmick and the whole doing what I apologize if is it the hacker or the dance that used to do at the start. But even like they were presented well, they wrestled well, they've been a solid tag team. And I was literally having this conversation last night with someone, and I said that I'm glad that Jay had that run as main event Jay, because normally what they always used to do with the Usos was if one of them got injured, the other one just stayed off TV. And the fact that they've got to that point now where Jay's had a run as main event Jay and had a solo run, I can appreciate that a lot more, because I say before you just wouldn't see him for 6 months when one of them was off the books.
Absolutely, and hopefully this is a lesson going forward, because they're doing such great work that it should happen again at any point. They could easily go and continue it. They're that good. They really, really are. And to give a rating, obviously, Dave Meltzer gave this a 2.5-star rating. For me, I'm going to go slightly higher. I'm going to go for 2.75. I like I said, quite enjoyed. This was quite an eye-pleasing match.
Yeah, I'm going to go 3. I think just for Tyson Kidd doing that outlandish stuff, just think added to it a little bit more for me. So yeah, I'll say a 3.
Absolutely, indeed. There, we will move on in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen. Just before we head towards that main event, we need to talk about the video package, which just basically hypes up the superstars. Really, there's only a couple of notes to take from it, which is Edge saying he injured Randy Orton, Charlotte, which you mentioned earlier on. It happened over the limit the month before, so there's that little bit of narrative given to us. And Sheamus saying if anyone's going to take up John Cena, it will be him. Of course, Sheamus had taken out Triple H after WrestleMania. Of course, for those that remember, of course, Triple H was taken off TV then till, pretty much just before WrestleMania 27, where plans completely changed, where Triple H then just took out Sheamus and then ended up challenging The Undertaker instead. But at this point, Sheamus was red hot property, had not been long in the company. Of course, had been a former champion back at the end of 2009. So he was still within the first year of his run here. And Sheamus was seen as one of the top dogs. But yeah, as a video package, not much else happened in the 3 or 4 minutes. It was just basically saying, I'm going to win and I'm good. Basically, all the accomplishments all these superstars had.
It feels very B-list pay-per-view promo package, really. It was like there was nothing outstanding about it. There was nothing to stand out. It's just a case of I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. I think the most the probably standout thing from it was the actual physical appearance of John Cena, because I noticed in 2010 he's a big guy. Compared to nowadays, he's definitely lost some of the weight and the muscle mass, because he doesn't look half as the same, because back then he was jacked. The other three all pretty much look the same, apart from Edge has got a few more grey hairs otherwise.
Pretty much. Again, though, babyface Sheamus, though, literally, if you look at him there, like, I mean, goodness, where he is now, we see him on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see. But obviously, let's go into the details then of that match, then, shall we? Because I've got quite a few notes for this one. They put quite a bit of effort in it for us for this match. But a few superstars from Raw in the locker room were watching in the back. I believe it was the Hart Dynasty, R-Truth, and Evan Bourne that were the ones that were watching, keeping an eye out in case the Nexus were to get involved at any point. But there was a lot of time spent. I don't know if you noticed this as well, Steve. It was that traditional fatal four-way WWE lazy booking thing where a lot of the time, two superstars would be in the ring and two would either be laid out either on the floor or on the apron. They just seemed to do a merry-go-round switcheroo every sort of couple of minutes. So it was pretty much a singles match, it felt, for a majority before we got towards that sort of climatic final third.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's just lazy booking for a Divas pay-per-view is what essentially what it was, because it's an easy way to get around it all. And it's like you've got four of your biggest stars in one match on the main event of a pay-per-view card. I'm pretty sure you could have done something better, but I just don't ever think this was meant to be about the match. I think this was just meant to be about the culmination of it, unfortunately, which is like even the result, I think, is soured because of what happened at the end of the match as well.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into it. For those that don't know, or for those that want to relive that memory, let's take you on a little journey, shall we? Obviously, then it starts off. I think one of the fun spots as well. It was fun for the time. It's still fairly new in Randy's arsenal, hitting the double DDT from the apron on both Cena and Sheamus. I think he'd only done that to Legacy before that. One of his fresher spots. I know he does it more regularly in the modern era, but for them, it seemed like a big deal. Orton pulls Sheamus off the top rope. He hits his head as well on the apron. Cena at the same time is folding onto the top rope as well. That's a fun looking spot as well. But then as we get as further on, this is when all the finishers, the climax starts. Cena puts the STFU on for a near submission on Edge. Sheamus makes the save. Randy Orton RKO Sheamus. Edge spears Orton, and then Sheamus bro kicks on Edge, and we see a near fall on Orton. Sheamus is then thrown over the announce table, and Edge spears Orton to the barricade. Cena is alone in the ring with everybody laid out on the floor, and that's when what you said, where it could sour it, starts, because we said there were superstars from Raw watching backstage. The Nexus come in and they attack those wrestlers backstage. And once they've finished with them, they hit the ring. And yes, they do attack John Cena to begin with. What are your thoughts there, Steve?
Just a point on the Nexus, right? Why is it that whenever these guys interfered, they were always in ring apparel? Like, you haven't turned up to have a match. Wear a pair of jeans, put the armband on your arm, wear a t-shirt, and just come in and cause chaos. Every time you saw the Nexus, they were always in ring gear. And I was like, me personally, I'm just like, it's so stupid, because you've not turned up to wrestle. You've turned up to beat people up and disappear again. Why are you in ring gear? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Sorry, Steve, what was your question, Gail? I just want a little tangent there about their presentation then.
And to be fair, we were just talking about how the culmination, but I see you wanted to jump in, and you make a fantastic point, really, because I mean, I don't know anybody that's watching, but if you want to see an attack come from outside the ring, you're not supposed to be in the building, you're not signed to the company, you want contracts. Would you come in budgie smugglers? Would you come in your Speedos? I don't think you would. I think you make a good point there. You know, that's not what you'd see.
Do you know who nailed this on the head perfectly was Aces and Eights in TNA/Impact, because those guys could just walk into a building because they'd just be wearing normal clothes. All right, the leather vests are a slight giveaway, but the point is, whenever they attack someone, they just generically look like they were wearing ring attire, like they were part of the audience, and it was how you do these surprise attacks, not showing up in your ring gear. There's so many times that you can turn around and go, like Adam Cole showing up in NXT, super kicks Drew McIntyre while Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly were on the ring apron. They were in ring gear because they wrestled that night. Adam Cole's in a pair of jeans and a button-up shirt, and he super kicks him. Why? Because he's not meant to be wrestling. It's such a peeve of mine that it's just like, it's a simple presentation thing. Because there's no other reason why they would be in ring gear. They haven't just come from the gym. They haven't had a match tonight. They didn't even win in the dark match. Just, yeah, it's just one of them things I really, really hate about when they do these surprise attack gimmicks.
It's a pet peeve, and I can see it and I can believe it as well, because I now you brought it up, kind of feel the same. It's interesting. But what I will say is a very nice touch though with that attack as well. Nexus coming to ringside. One thing I always liked was the commentary always sold this so well. Obviously, when Nexus made that big debut and obviously destroyed the entire ring set, Justin Roberts got attacked, obviously, that lead to Daniel Bryan originally getting fired in the first place. And he wasn't a part of the Nexus at this point. Obviously, it's like Barrett, Ryback, Sheffield, and Justin Gabriel.
Did you hear the crowd through this match at the start? Because all they were chanting for was Daniel Bryan.
And yeah, well, I just want to mention, you mentioned now, mention it as well. So all the chant at the end of the show as well, as it's going off air. Yeah. There's Daniel Bryan chants being chanted. So people wanted Bryan back in.
Yeah, sorry. So who were the members? Sorry, so you had Barrett, Skip Sheffield ended up becoming Ryback, Justin Gabriel,
Heath Slater, Michael Tavia, I believe was his name.
Is he the one in the mask?
Yeah, it's like the mask that covers his face, a bit like what the Shield did, like in the 2013.
And Darren Young, Harrison at this point. Oh, Darren Young, there we go.
Darren Young, yeah. Husky Harrison, Michael McGillicuddy came in later, around towards the end of 2010, so they weren't in at this stage. But it's I might be missing one person, but if I am, apologies to whoever I'm missing. But the Nexus, I mean, they came in and they did cause chaos when they first came. It was a really well-told storyline up until SummerSlam, and I love the fact it was a great faction. And for me, the one thing I liked was the key ingredient was here commentary. They sold it because there was no commentary for the rest of the show. They fled. They went. They didn't want to wait. Yeah, they didn't want to wait around to find out what happened. Obviously, see that beatdown happen to John Cena in ring. And what I did like was actually they were united. Edge came in to try and make the save. He pulled Barrett out of the ring and actually sacrificed his chances of winning the world title and got a beat down himself from the Nexus. Of course, Randy also been taken out ringside, so he was already gone out of there. Sheamus saw an opportunity, crawled into the ring, got the 1-2-3, got the championship. But instead of actually waiting around and celebrate, the Nexus turned around and got back in the ring because they wanted nobody to win. Sheamus jumps over the barricade and goes through the crowd and gets himself away. It's a very interesting way to finish off the show because then obviously we see the same thing happen. The beatdown on Cena continues after the match is finished. We see, the Nexus just causing havoc up until the moment that Sheamus is seen back on the top of the ring ramp area celebrating with the championship. At that point, we see then Sheamus completely runs to the back, Nexus are following. We just see the carnage left in the ring. That's pretty much all there was. And like we mentioned a couple of moments ago, the chants going off air were not about the new champion. We're not let's go Cena sucks or anything like that. No Edge, no Orton. The chants, they wanted the return of Daniel Bryan. So the Yes Movement, it was even over in 2010. Definitely was one of the more over guys in there. But this match was 17 and a half minutes in the end. And like you said, that was the longest match on the show. Dave Meltzer rated this a 3-star. Definitely from storyline narrative. When you look back in hindsight, in my opinion, I would say that we know what happened with the Nexus, so I feel like it's taken away a bit from the match. But obviously, when you look at it there and then, I can imagine the excitement and buzz being added onto because this group was serious, it was real, and at the time, it felt like it was a legitimate threat for a lot of people in WWE. There was a long time where Wade Barrett should have become the first ever English World Heavyweight Champion. Never happened in the end. But Steve, I come to you then and ask, what were your feelings with the main event? What was your thought process?
I was just looking on Pro Fight DB because I'm trying to find out if that was Sheamus's first championship win.
Second.
And I'm sitting, and I was trying to think because that's what I was sitting there thinking. If that was the first time he'd ever won a world championship, wouldn't you just be a little bit peeved? The fact that your first time is like, oh, you've rolled in, stole the pin, booked it, and got out again. You don't really have a chance to celebrate it. Like I said, I just think that if I'd have been a fan. And that would have been how my pay-per-view would have ended. Okay, we got a result in the main event. Normally, sometimes you just get these screwy finishes and then there's no decider in the match. I suppose getting a decider is a plus. But I think if I was a fan and that would have been and I'd have paid to go and see that and that's how it would have ended, I think I'd feel a little bit ripped off if I was honest with you. I feel like I'd have been okay with them like attacking Cena, taking him out of the match, and letting the other three finish. I'd have been okay with that, but I just feel it's not the way that I would have loved to have seen it happen. To be fair, like I said, I just think for everything that the Nexus did and their presentation and everything, and like the way their story ended up finishing, it almost feels like I don't know. I just feel almost like we should have had more. We should have had something special from the Nexus. We should have maybe had Wade Barrett win the World Heavyweight Championship from John Cena or something. And I think this sums up how. I don't know. It's just one of them things. Unfortunately, I just think John Cena and the Nexus is just one of them things that it's two ingredients that should never have mixed. Unfortunately, but it did.
I think it could have, if it had finished with the right result in the end of the story, I think would have been different. SummerSlam was the first step of what was the real downfall for the Nexus. Unfortunately, never really recovered, even when CM Punk was the leader. And at that point, I really was getting into the group. But then, unfortunately, we got the core that followed it. But I get where you're coming from. I do get where you're coming from with a lot of things. And by the way, just for people that were interested, this was the days where this was still pay-per-view. There wasn't the WWE Network. So people did buy tickets for this and also bought it for probably what? $30, $40, $50 back in the day. So, I mean, like the buy rate was 143,000 for this show. Looking on Wikipedia now, obviously the attendance in the crowd was 10,000 in the Nassau Coliseum as well. So quite a sizable enough gate for a B pay-per-view show, a first of its kind as well, never to be replicated again. But at the same time, you look at this and like you say, I mean, I'm a bit disappointed that we had 3 fatal 4-way matches on this show, and none of them stand out to be one of the best fatal 4-way matches ever, which is something I'm going to give to you a little bit. I'm going to give my top 3 fatal 4-way matches of all time in a couple of moments' time. But yeah, it does feel like a bit of a screwy finish. But at the same time, like you say, I'm glad we got a result. I was happy Sheamus for him because obviously we said that little ingredient nugget earlier in the night. Edge said he wasn't good enough to be in the match. He's walked away with the championship, obviously over 3 established guys as well. So that's another way to get Sheamus up the ladder. For Sheamus's first win, by the way, it was at TLC, I believe, back in 2009. Or whatever the pay-per-view had been, December 2009. Sheamus beat John Cena in a tables match. That's how he won his first championship. Right, yeah. So, yeah, just for a bit of historical knowledge there. But, yeah, interesting stuff indeed. But like I say,
you can see why they never did another Fatal 4-Way pay-per-view again. Because this essentially would have just fallen into the most problem with most pay-per-views in the last 10 years is that we get these gimmick pay-per-views, but then nothing on the card is playing into that gimmick. So the fact that we got 3 fatal 4-ways is fine. I can see why they didn't do a fatal 4-way for the tag titles because they didn't really have a lot of tag teams established at this point. But you could have had a fatal 4-way for every match, but then I suppose it would have been overkill. So yeah, I can see why they didn't do it, and you can probably see why they never did it again. Just one of the things with WWE, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Well, Dave Meltzer gave this a 3-star rating for the main event. What would you say that this match deserved?
I'm gonna have to go probably 2.75. It was okay. It was just like I said. I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big like. I think. Do you know what I think it is I'm soured by the aftertaste of what comes afterwards. And it just like for me, it kind of just ruins it for me. I think if it had ended differently, I could have probably appreciated this a lot more. But it just, like I said, the end story at the end of the day, whatever happens between John Cena and the Nexus, just ruins it for me.
For me, looking at it for what it is on the there and the now, I'm going to agree with Big Dave. I'm going to go with the 3-star purely because if you want to go with an alternative, and if I may play devil's advocate, you have got a cliffhanger at the end of the show. You've got a reason to tune into Monday Night Raw.
Yes.
So I do feel for that reason there is something that's good that comes out of it. But of course, wouldn't we have loved to seen this match end cleanly? Because I mean, I'm going to go on to some of my best fatal 4 matches in a minute. 3 of the 4 in this match are in my favorite fatal 4-way ever. So that shows that they definitely can do it when it's there and mix it up.
I suppose this really does just play into typical WWE booking for the decade, where it's like, by doing it, you've protected everyone else who lost that match, because you've protected Edge, you've protected Randy, you've protected John Cena, because they've all been taken out by an outside interference. Sheamus can pick up the championship and do whatever he wants with it. So, yeah, I suppose it's typical WWE booking.
Absolutely. And it's arguably trying to build new stars as well. The Nexus, obviously the group that's over at the time, didn't end up that way. Sheamus, the World Heavyweight Champion, still doing all right for himself today. Just needs that IC title just to wrap things up. But all in all, I mean, it's an interesting pay-per-view from start to finish. What I would say is, I suppose if you want, I feel like I almost want to do what's his name? Jerry Springer. My final thoughts. It's a very storyline driven show in places. Obviously, look at the main event, you look at the opener, you look even at the World Heavyweight title match. There's a lot of storylines in those 3 matches. There's a lot to sink your teeth into, regardless of whether it affects those matches or not. There's certainly some in a good way, maybe some not in so much of a good way. But the in-ring quality for me overall on this show is decent enough. I think it's definitely worth people going out of their way to watch it if they want to watch something that's an original pay-per-view, because that's what this whole poll was for this retro review, was to see original shows, original content. So you can't say like, we just come off WrestleMania. There's been 39 of them. There's only been one Fatal 4-Way show. So it's like, maybe there's a reason for it, but there is some good wrestling in the show. And I think it's fun to go back and look it over. So for me, I'm going to start going with final grades for this now. And I'll get your final thoughts in a couple of seconds, Steve. But my final grade for this show, I'm going to go for a 6 out of 10. I think that the show is 2.5 hours long as well, which is nice. If this was like a 4-hour show, it would drag and you'd say, oh God, what am I doing here? And I would think a lot less of it. But 2.5 hours, sizable, 7 matches. In-ring is fine. Some of the storylines is okay. Some of the stuff is disappointing though, which leads it down to a 6 out of 10. But for me, this show, it rests on fine and definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it and you want to go out your way to watch something a bit different. Steve, what are your final thoughts?
I would have to agree with you. I'd go 6 out of 10. It's house show quality at best with some extra sprinkles on top. So I think it's just, like I said, we've already been through it all. There's certain matches that deliver the storyline beats that lead on to a reason to watch. It's essentially what a B-list pay-per-view is there to do. But don't get me wrong, there's good and there's bad, but there's just slightly a little bit more good than there is bad in it. So I'm going to say the same as you and say 6 out of 10.
There we are indeed there. Now, I did promise everybody, because like I say, Fatal 4-Way is the name of the show, but I don't think we have the best Fatal 4-Way of all time on this show. And I think that there have been some better ones. I'm going to give you my 3 top Fatal 4-Way matches of all time. Steve, if you have any that creep to mind or you agree with any of them, feel free to jump in and add to it. But third place for me, from memory of these as well, I'm going to go with Extreme Rules 2016. The Miz defending his championship, but it was the United States Championship. Could have even been the IC title. IC title. We won that from Zack Ryder after WrestleMania. So the Intercontinental Championship, defending against Cesaro, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens. 20-minute masterclass. Obviously, Miz cheating to win in the end there, but we've seen haluva kicks. We've seen Cesaro, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn as well. From where there's a lot of promise in those guys as well at that point, when they've just been fresh faces in the company as well. So some really good stuff in that. Obviously, the big meaty men main event of SummerSlam 2017. Brock Lesnar, Braun Strowman, Roman Reigns, Samoa Joe, all throwing each other about. Tables being broken, just destruction around ringside. Really fun time with that one as well. But my favorite, if you need to go and watch a Fatal 4-Way match, make sure you go and watch this one. Backlash, the main event 2007. I mentioned 3 of the 4 in the main event of this show, but they got a chance just to mix it up and have one of the greatest finishes of a Fatal 4-Way match ever, probably of a match in history in WWE. It is John Cena, Randy Orton, Edge, and Shawn Michaels. And of course, we're seeing spears, we're seeing RKOs, Shawn Michaels hitting that sweet chin music on John Cena. And of course, Shawn falls back down himself because he's a bit groggy. Cena just falls into the pinfall for that victory. It's an absolute chef's kiss masterclass of a match. And like I say, for me, I think still to the moment is the greatest Fatal 4-Way of all time when it comes to regular singles competitors. So that's going to be my top counts there.
I just, while I was listening to you then, I just quickly Googled and just went onto the first one I found that says best Fatal 4-Way matches of all time. And there's 2 on here. There's one on here that I'm really intrigued to watch because I can't remember it, but it sounds like it should be a banger. And there is
Go
one
for
I
it.
do remember, which I'm going to add to as one of my favorites. So just running through this list quickly. Number 10, Sheamus versus Del Rio versus Orton versus Jericho over the limit 2012.
Interesting.
9, which is the one I do remember, which I fucking love this match. Excuse my French, sorry.
Nice.
Usos versus Alistair Black and Ricochet versus The Bar versus Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura at WrestleMania 34 for the SmackDown Tag Team titles was a great match because that was the weekend when Ricochet and Black had the opportunity to win the NXT, the Raw, and the SmackDown over the course of one weekend, and it didn't happen, unfortunately. I was so gutted for it. But then just to quickly move on, the 4 Horsewomen at NXT TakeOver Rival.
Yeah, it was a very good one, that one.
That was a very good one. I remember bits of it, but again, it's one I'm going to have to go back and watch. TLC 2010, Del Rio, Kane, Edge, and Rey Mysterio was one. Again, this is just the first list I found. Lesnar, Strowman, Joe, and Reigns, which you've already said. I'm going to save that one till last because that's the one I'm most intrigued about. Number 4 on this list was Balor, Cesaro, Rusev, Kevin Owens at Raw 2016.
Brilliant man, that one. Yeah.
I can't, as I said, it's one of the ones I probably have to go back and watch. Number 3 was Neville versus Zayn versus Breeze versus Kid at TakeOver Fatal 4-Way.
Oh, that's what they kind of did do their own version of it then, didn't they?
Yeah, so it's an NXT version, so it's not technically Fatal 4-Way, but it's the same as in your house.
We're saving ourselves here.
Yeah, exactly. The two they've got the Miz versus Cesaro versus Owens versus Zayn as Extreme Rules 2016, and the number 1, which is what you've just said, which is John Cena versus Edge, Randy Orton, Shawn Michaels. But the one I'm most intrigued about, which I can't say I remember off the top of my head, Chris Jericho versus Eddie Guerrero versus X-Pac versus He Who Should Not Be Named from No Way Out 2001.
Interesting.
Something tells me that that's a banger. Having Mr. Benoit, who, you know, we're not saying no more about him, but having Jericho, Guerrero, and X-Pac in a Fatal 4-Way, I'm going to have to go back and watch that now because that sounds like it should be an absolute killer.
It might be what we're going to be doing after the show here, but there's enough there for people to go, that's some Fatal 4-Way matches we need to go and check out there. There's some good stuff in amongst there. And like I say, this show is good as well. You can actually compare with these Fatal 4-Way matches as well there. But yeah, that's what we put down as some of the best ones of all time for you there. But interesting what it says on that show. But there being the Backlash 2007 one being the best one ever. But I agree with you. Might have to go and check out No Way 2001 just for that match alone. But just before we wrap things up, is there anything you'd like to finish off a quotes or discussion with when it comes to Fatal 4-Way from 2010?
No, like I said, if you get a chance, there is a couple of matches you should go and check out. For instance, Kofi Drew, Jericho versus Evan Bourne, there we go. Yeah, there's a couple of good matches to go out and check on it. So it's not a case of it's a show you have to watch everything of, but there is a couple of bits in this match you should definitely go back and watch because they are thoroughly entertaining, and some of it is quite ahead of its time for the time it was set at.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a really good point, actually. With in-ring action, it's quite creative. And like we said, there's a lot of original spots on this show. Something that you would say, oh, I didn't expect that to come. And that's what made it quite fun to review this show. I must admit, the reviewing part has been quite good with this one. So I think it's a great choice that everyone voted this show. Thank you everyone that got involved in the polls and stuff. Everyone that's been watching as well. Hope you've all enjoyed it. Please do consider hitting the like button as well. It really helps with the boring stuff on YouTube, but it helps this channel out massively. So we do appreciate it if you can hit the like button, share with a friend as well, and subscribe to this channel as well. For those people that are watching on Here and Now, just to let you know, in less than half an hour, my WWE Draft 2023 predictions video will be available for you to watch in full. It's half an hour long. I highly recommend it if you get an opportunity. It was a lot of fun putting that one together. Just before we close off today, I'd just like to talk about the retro reviews going forward. SCW Rewind. It's the first time we've done one in a year, near enough. It's something that I'm a big fan of, doing the retro content on this channel. But I want to find a way where it connects with my viewers. I want, with everyone that watches and supports this channel, I want to know what format you want these shows going forward. Because we've been doing it in live stream. We've been doing it where we do a podcast format, where we just talk about it. That's fun if that's what everybody likes. But maybe people want shorter versions of the show where it's pre-recorded. Maybe people want to do watch-alongs. There's different ways and different avenues, different types of shows as well. Maybe people want reviewed as well. I want to find a way to see where I'm connecting on YouTube when it comes to these shows. Am I connecting with my usual audience? Am I connecting with a different audience? I just want to gauge and see where we stand with the retro shows, because I want to continue doing them and I want to do it in a way that is fun for everybody. So if you want to get in comment, feel free. Even if you say, I don't watch these, just let me know. It'd be quite nice to know people's takes of what they think when it comes to the retro shows. But Steve, it's been a lot of fun doing this with you, my friend. And first time I think we've had you on for a retro show. Hopefully I can get you, convince you to do another one of these in the future.
Like I said, I'm always up for Canadian Stampede whenever you want to do that. But do you know what I'd really like? I know it's a cliche and so many people have done it before, but Invasion. I would love to do a recap of Invasion, because it's terrible. But for me, as a 15, 16-year-old, this is the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, at some point, I'd like to do a review of Invasion from 2001, I believe it was.
It was indeed, yeah. There is actually, I have done a retro review before on this channel. But what I would say is if we could do it again as a watch-along, that could be the way we could do it, to mix it up and make something a bit different for everybody. Again, if it's something you want, people, let us know in the comments now. That's what we suggest. But that's all from us anyway. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Draft predictions coming up very shortly. More retro reviews are in the playlist on this channel as well. Go and check out the playlist. There's plenty of them there now. WrestleManias, all sorts of shows, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, you name it, it's there. Go and check out one of your favorite shows now. Thank you all for taking the time out. We'll see you all very, very soon. This has been the retro review for Fatal 4-Way from 2010.